Hello and welcome to the Downsized. My name is Christopher Durham,
I'm Laraine Durham.
and this is the channel where we talk about our adventure on GLP-1s. I've used Zep Bound Manjaro and compounded Tirzepatide all over the course of the last 65 weeks and done well with it, about 94 pounds down as of today, almost to my goal weight. So I started at 286.5 pounds and I'm at 192 right now. My goal weight's 190. So super excited about that. How about you, Laraine?
Well, I'm Laraine Durham. My starting weight was 193. Today I weighed 141, so a little over 50 pounds down on compounded Tirzepatide. I've been in maintenance. I've maintained this weight for about 6 months now. Had very good success, lost about 1.5 pounds a month when I was in my weight loss mode. So now just trying to maintain and trying to figure that out. And yeah, with Christopher here, we've just created this channel, and today we have a special guest.
Yeah, so today we're excited to welcome Dr. Dan. Dr. Dan, good to have you, sir.
Yeah, thank you very much, guys. It's a pleasure to be here.
So before we jump into Dr. Dan, let me do the obligatory. So like and subscribe, hit the bell. When you finish here, go over to Dr. Dan's channel and hit like and subscribe as well. And then, of course, Laraine and I are not medical professionals. We are not doctors. So everything is from our personal experience or research. Dr. Dan is a medical professional. However, he's not your medical professional. So make sure you deal with your own personal provider to get personalized care just for you. Do you want to add anything to that, Dan?
No, I think that covers all of it. So,
okay. Well, let's start with who is Dr. Dan?
Yeah, so I'm a good old Canadian. Been born and raised here, and I'm technically a pharmacist by training, but have done some very, very extensive further education, getting my doctorate of pharmacy and a variety of different letters after my name. And yeah, I specialize in obesity management. I was actually one of the first pharmacists in Canada to really start working in it. And I think I'm, as far as I know, one of the only pharmacists worldwide that is doing it full time at present. So it's been a very cool experience of kind of figuring things out. And it's very much a space where a lot of medical professionals, kind of everybody's playing around with a lot of different ideas, different models. And I mean, we're just getting so much new research and things coming out. So we're all kind of trying to figure out what's the best way to go about it. And yeah, I've been kind of utilizing that and kind of building out my own practice and have developed a pharmacist-led obesity clinic here in Calgary, Alberta. And I have a panel of hundreds upon hundreds of patients at this point in time. So much so it's getting a tad bit overwhelming at times. And then on top of that, I do the YouTube thing at the official Dr. Dan, as well as other social media channels. And that's kind of my way. It's like my playtime. I get to interact with people all over the world and provide them good quality, no BS education that I'm hoping is breaking through all of the various diet culture, diet mentality, and breaking down some of that stigma and other, well, for lack of a better term, garbage that's been put out there in terms of information. So that's a bit about me.
Oh, but that's I saw your videos and I was like, I've got to talk to this guy because, but there's just so much stuff going on in this conversation. Everything from people selling wacky supplements to chiropractors making up medicine there's all kinds of stuff out there. So I loved hearing some of the stuff that you've been talking about, and we'll kind of walk through some of it in a minute. So personally, have you ever had a weight issue or used any of these medications? Or
Yeah, so growing up, I did struggle with my weight, and my story is a little bit as I kind of went through my teens and such like that, was kind of always having that baby fat and was always waiting to apparently grow taller, and it was all going to disappear.
Me too.
Yeah, right.
I'm still waiting.
Exactly. So that never actually happened. Unfortunately, when I was 16, I was actually jumped at a party, and the gentleman that was beating me up, he was kicking me in the head and ended up breaking my jaw. And so I had my jaw wired shut for 6 weeks, and I couldn't eat. It was all liquids. And yeah, I lost 40 pounds in 6 weeks. And it was very interesting because I came out on the other side of it, and it was like a whole other aspect now where I was no longer getting bullied about my weight. I was getting all this attention from the opposite sex. And then, there's definitely some PTSD aspect being left over from getting jumped at a party and stuff. And it further kind of built on my body dysmorphia, and I need to get as big and muscular as possible.
Mm.
And then, yeah, kind of the attention and the things that kind of came forward when I had lost the weight and really got that other experience of just how society treats people that are living in larger bodies. And, looking back on it, or at the time, didn't really kind of understand that. But looking back on it, it's like, well, screw you guys. Like, that's like how, yeah, it's just so I very much had the empathy and the understanding going into it. And then, yeah, through my 20s, I did a decade of university. Basically, I was just trying to avoid being an adult and collecting all the student debt, and got into pharmacy, decided to go back and get my doctor of pharmacy. And yeah, I kind of built out my practice from there. I got introduced to, I guess, the medical science liaison for Novo Nordisk, and Saxenda was coming out, and we were, he was telling me all about it. The cool thing I think that was originally about obesity medicine is that there wasn't a lot of medications or things out on the market. So your blood pressure, I have like 20 different agents that I can
Right.
prescribe and give you. Same thing with diabetes, and the lifestyle stuff's like, oh yeah, we should talk about that. And we do, but it just doesn't click to the same way. So the approach that was being taken with obesity medicine was there was a lot of focus on the emotional, psychological, all these other aspects that really are underpinning some of the components of why people struggle with their weight. And yeah, that's like my jam. I love, well, my patients often say, like, when we have our interactions and stuff, they're like, this was more like a therapy session than just a weight loss, getting on a drug and kind of going from there. And it's like, well, we need to undress all the other stuff that's going on there. And it's how you actually create behavior change. So it's not just we give you something, you lose weight, and then you regain the weight. It's like, no, we're looking for sustainable lifestyle changes to improve your overall health. And so pretty much after that, the rest is history. I've just been kind of building and growing. And yeah, we just keep getting bigger and bigger every single year. So it's been a very cool experience.
So how did you get started with YouTube? I mean, how did that happen?
Well, initially I blew up on TikTok. I had like
Mhm.
100K followers on TikTok, and then there was like this big crackdown on all clinicians that were talking about weight loss medications and stuff, because apparently it's fat phobic, and that went against someone at TikTok. They didn't like it. And so I actually got banned, and then I worked to get my account back. And I was kind of doing some stuff on YouTube, but at that point I decided to make the full flip. And I was just like, well, screw you guys. I'm not going to go back there, / you're not paying me anything. So
Yeah.
I'm going to go to YouTube, build the channel and that sort. And then I just started pumping out the videos, and then it's just been consistently putting them out and growing. And, every once in a while you get a video that hits and it takes off. And then that just kind of further fuels the subscriptions. And yeah, I much prefer YouTube overall.
And you've got what, 40,000 plus subscribers, I think.
I think we're coming up on 45,000 pretty
Yeah.
quickly here.
Wow.
So
Wow.
yeah, we're clipping along. It's been doing pretty well overall.
That's awesome. Well, so basically the way I wanted to shape this is I went back and watched a bunch of your videos, and I just kind of love your attitude of here's the truth, guys, no BS. So this is kind of here's the 10 no BS topics that I get to ask Dr. Dan about that hopefully people will care. So
Totally.
number one, what is obesity?
So obesity, and the definition around this is kind of changing. There's actually a kind of a new paper that came out, but the quick and the short of it is that obesity is having an excess amount of fat tissue or adiposity that can lead to health issues or health concerns. And that's going to be things like contributing to diabetes, hypertension, and that sort of thing. So it's really having an amount of fat, and in particular fat around your organs, that is causing and can lead to disease and other complications and such. So it's a chronic and progressive disease, mostly being genetically and physiologically driven. Certainly we can do things to intervene there and such, but it's always going to be a battle and a challenge for those people that have ultimately developed it.
So
Yeah.
so
Well, let's say that again for maybe somebody tuning in for the first time. Obesity is a disease, a chronic disease that we're battling. We've been battling. I think that's important for people to hear.
Absolutely. Yeah. I always tell people, like, the losing the weight part is generally the easy part. It's that maintaining that weight loss, because
Yeah.
once that weight is lost, your body is going to be fighting tooth and nail to try and bring it back up. And then we're in this, well, we essentially have this biology that 30,000 years ago, when food was very scarce, it was perfect. We could sit down and gorge on the woolly mammoth that we just got down because we had to pack on as much weight as possible because tomorrow the woolly mammoth meat's going to be bad. And we didn't know when the next one was going to come along.
Right.
The big problem is that we take this very effective biology and we plop it into today's environment where we have an overabundance of food and very delicious, engineered, the billions and billions of dollars that have gone into that industry to make it as palatable and enjoyable as possible. Well, we get the obesity crisis.
Yeah. And here we are.
So leads to the next question, and the food kind of thing is there any one thing that has caused this?
So there's not a one thing I would say. Well, if we say one thing, it would be highly processed foods.
Mhm.
And people will debate online back and forth that it's the fat, it's the carbs, it's this, that, and the other thing. But highly processed foods basically are these things that have been put together that are hyper palatable, and they're made up of salt, sugar, and fat, the three things that really make food taste good. And it's put into various different combinations, but ultimately it doesn't have a high nutritional content by any means. It's very cheap to make. It's stable on the shelf for years at a time kind of thing. And it is so calorie dense that, you eat a little bit of it, you're going to be way over a calorie amount that your body can handle and ultimately start gaining weight. The other big problem is that with the engineering behind it, it hijacks that reward system and it makes you want to consume more and more of it. So that's kind of the biggest thing that we're seeing come out of it. It's not just the fat, it's not just the sugar, because if people talk about, oh, it's the carbs or it's the sugar, well, I don't see you going into your pantry and a spoon and eating out of a bag of sugar or something like that. Like that just doesn't happen. So
Yeah.
it's the amalgamation and combination of the way that these foods are put together, and that makes it all so delicious kind of thing. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, for some people, they can eat those very delicious, highly processed foods and not develop obesity. Whereas I think my mother was restricting me from everything from about the age of 6 on. So how come some people, I mean, some people just predisposed to obesity?
Yeah, absolutely. So depending on your genetic makeup and also kind of the environment that you grew up in, that's going to play certainly a big role on it. If we look at parents that were raised in the 30s and that sort of thing through the Great Depression,
Yeah.
they became part of the Clear the Plate Club. Like you don't
Right.
waste any food. Every single morsel has to be, eaten off that plate. And so they were the ones that then passed that on to their children. And that's what you kind of learn from that aspect of things. Similarly, a lot of women, their moms were doing the best that they could, and they were going to Weight Watchers, and they're like, oh, hey, my daughter, or the doctor said my daughter is gaining weight. Well, why don't you come to Weight Watchers with me? And not realizing that that's kind of setting up this mentality around food rules and this is good food, this is bad food. And so it becomes this dichotomy of a poor relationship with food. And then that carries over into your adult and you kind of navigate and work through life. And then we have other people who, it's always the people, like I use the example, you ask somebody if they want a cookie. The people that don't struggle with their weight, they're the ones that'll say back, well, I'm not hungry. And it's like, well, I didn't ask you if you were hungry. I asked you if
Yeah,
you
I
wanted
know. I
to
never
get a
understood
cookie,
those people.
right? So those people, they're just some people that just don't have the same metabolic derangements and, dysfunction in their various pathways where maybe there's a leptin resistance, maybe ghrelin hormones are at a lower level, but they just don't have that same struggle. And their body is very much more in tune with, we eat what we need and that's it. And we're good to go. On the flip side of it, there's other people who, depending on how your body metabolically adapts. So it's interesting we often talk about metabolic adaptation in the aspect of losing weight,
Mhm.
but we also have studies that show when we overfeed people, we also get metabolic adaptation going the other way. And so we did a comparison. There was multiple people in the study. Some people overate and it was just like a few hundred calories over. They packed on weight like crazy. Other people maybe would gain weight, but it would go straight to muscle mass. Other
Huh.
people, their metabolic rate increased to such a degree that it's just like, yeah, this isn't a problem. And it just
They
balanced
just
out and
adapted.
Totally.
They adapted. Wow. I wish I was one of those people.
You and me both, right? So
Yeah, that's interesting to think about. Some people, they can overeat, it goes right to muscle. Some people, they eat and they adapt. But like me, I overeat, I gain weight. The end.
yeah,
Well, so
absolutely.
it's, I mean, you may not know the answer, but then the question becomes, is it genetic? So was I born that way and it came from, 1,000 years of my family's background, or is there something in the environment or what I ate or how I behaved that created this broken metabolism, or is it some combination?
It's always going to be some combination of all of it.
Yeah.
Essentially, the way we say it is that genetics, builds the gun, and then the environment pulls the trigger, kind of there, right?
Yeah.
And so your genetics that you're born with are going to predispose you one way or another. Similarly, it's going to predispose you to how tall you are, your risk of diabetes, other conditions like that. So if you
Mhm.
have that makeup that's there, and then you get into an environment where, maybe it's an environment where a lot of processed foods is in the house and that sort of thing, that can certainly also contribute to it, not only in like learned behaviors at a very young age,
Mhm.
but there's a whole area of what we call epigenetics, where it's the turning on and off of various genes in the genome. And
Mhm.
so that environment, the people you hang out with, even you guys in North Carolina, me up here in Canada, there's going to be certain genes that would get switched on and off based on the environment that you're in. That's also further going to contribute to it. So
Hmm.
it really is kind of like a layering and stacking aspect of things. And some people I find, they're perfectly fine all through their teens, all through their adulthood. And it's not until, for women especially, they start going through menopause, and that's when they suddenly pack on weight. And it's like, yeah, the genes were all there. The shift in your hormones is the trigger that then was pulled.
Wow. Interesting.
Well, and it's not 100 years ago, and most of us are sedentary suburbanites. We're not farmers or ranchers out there working 12 hours a day. So
Totally.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
That didn't help when we slowed down to desk jobs, I guess. So yeah.
well, so talk to me about then the drugs and how they play in this.
totally. So when it comes to our appetite, hunger, and that sort of thing, it's a very, very complex system of a variety of satiety hormones. And actually, on the hunger appetite side of it, it's really only one hormone, ghrelin, which is the main one that comes from our stomach, that
Mhm.
tells us we are hungry, you need to eat. I always remember ghrelin as, if your stomach's growling, so grr, that means
Mhm.
ghrelin's being released,
Makes
Gremlin.
sense.
right? Exactly. So and then on the satiety hormone side, there is so many different mechanisms and ways that our body regulates that, and how it all kind of interplays and intersects with other aspects of our biology. But when it comes to the medications, what we have primarily found and have been really having great success with is what we call the incretin hormones, or the GLP-1 receptor agonist is kind of the more common name people know. But the incretin hormones are a group of satiety hormones that, when you eat a meal, they naturally get released from your intestine, and they have a number of different functions throughout the body. So, as the example of GLP-1, which is in Ozempic and Wegovy, it's also in Tirzepatide, but there's another one there too. What it first does is it goes to your pancreas, and I always describe it as like it massages your pancreas and helps it to produce a bit more insulin. That helps to bring your insulin level, or increase your insulin levels, which helps to regulate your blood sugar. It then goes to your liver and says, hey, liver, you don't need to produce any more sugar or energy because we have food coming into the system. So it shuts down that piece. So it's that mechanism by which it helps with diabetes management, and is very effective. When your blood sugars are in the normal range, that whole mechanism shuts off. The next thing it does is it goes to your stomach, and it slows down how quickly food goes from the stomach to the small intestine. Again, food's in the system. It does want you to stop eating at some point. So it creates that sensation of fullness. The final thing it does is it goes up into the brain, and it's working in the hypothalamus and the reward centers of our brain. So the hypothalamus is kind of like your thermostat of the body. It wants to keep everything in balance and make sure that, you're not running too hot, your blood pressure is not too high. It just wants nice, good balance. Same thing with your weight. If it's detecting that there's an imbalance in terms of weight, it's going to start responding by sending signals to the reward center, which is what motivates us. It's what gets us up off the couch. And when it comes to food, it's what where the signal is coming from that says, go and find food. We need fuel. And so the drugs are mimicking these hormones. And when we mimic them and increase essentially the concentration of them in the body, we get the more pronounced effects of those various mechanisms that then help an individual to create a calorie deficit more easily.
Mm.
And then that ultimately leads to very successful weight loss.
So one
Wow.
thing, let me tease it out a little bit. So the drugs are mimicking these hormones. So let me repeat it back. These are not actually the same exact things that the peptides that are being produced by your body. They're something that a pharmacist or a scientist at one of the drug companies have created to
To
extend the
mimic.
life, to mimic those.
Yeah, so the molecule itself, like GLP-1, that's say in Ozempic or semaglutide, the GLP-1 component is like 99% homologous to the human GLP-1 hormone that's produced.
Mhm.
What they've added on is like this fatty acid chain that then allows it to get bound by proteins in our bloodstream. And over the week, it slowly dissociates from that protein. So it's
Huh.
continually having an effect on the various GLP-1 receptors throughout your body. So
Huh.
when it gets broken off from that fatty acid chain, the GLP-1 has that effect and has that response on those receptors, but it's the slow release of it aspect so that it extends how long it lasts, because your natural GLP-1, it's only active in your body for like 5 to 10 minutes before it's getting
Mhm.
broken down, and that's it. So we
Right.
needed to create a way to make it last longer so
Longer.
that people don't have to inject themselves every 20 minutes kind of thing.
Yeah.
Which is the science that Novo started doing, and then
That was the
Lilly and
breakthrough.
Viking and a bunch are
Yeah.
now working on, that allow them to patent it and have an ownable thing. Because I'm
Totally.
sure you see it, people go, "Oh, you can't patent a peptide. That's you don't know what you're talking about, people."
Well, I
Totally.
have heard that. I have heard that, but it's the piece that they added to make it last longer that isn't exactly the same as what your body makes.
Well, yes, and it's the process of how they manufacture it, how they
Yeah.
scale it up and get it into their various solutions and that sort of thing. So when you actually look at the patent, it's not just like a single patent, it's like 50 different patents on all these different
Oh, okay.
processes and different things like that. But they all kind of get lumped together as, this is the process for making Ozempic. We have a
Mhm.
patent on all of this. This is ours. You can't replicate it until the patent runs out.
Right. Interesting.
Well,
Yeah.
so then let's take the next step forward on the on these medications. Obviously, they started out kind of as diabetes drugs, and coincidentally, people were losing weight, so it kind of spun from there. But talk to me, if I'm brand new to this, right? And my neighbor, my sister, somebody on, Oprah is losing weight on, and I'm Googling, what are they? What can I expect? What's the download there?
Totally. So the main ones that are currently on the market for weight management are Wegovy and Zep Bound. Now, the diabetes version of those is Ozempic and Mounjaro. There's also Saxenda, and there's a variety of other GLP-1 medications that just didn't get the same claim to fame because they aren't nearly as effective on the weight loss side of it. But yeah, so what we have with those medications is essentially we're using them. They're a tool in our toolbox to help you to not only manage blood sugar levels, but also helping you to manage weight. Now, how much weight somebody loses, like on an average level, if we look at Wegovy at the top dose, it's about 15%, maybe higher, depending on which study you read and all the procedures and stuff. Zep bound, again, 21% is the average and such like that. There's going to be some people who lose more. There's going to be some people who lose less. There's some people who don't respond at all. Really, what we're looking at, and we start at a very slow dose, is to kind of manage the side effect components of things. So initially, there can be some primarily gastrointestinal or stomach side effects because your body needs to get used to that higher level of it. And in particular, it's slowing down that gastric emptying, or how quickly food's going from the stomach to the small intestine. And so in slowing that process down, yeah, we can get some nausea, heartburn, rarely constipation or diarrhea. And those would be kind of the things that we need to look at there. But that whole process does speed up eventually as your body gets used to the medication. And so that will get better managed and will go away. The other big thing that I always tell people about is there is a risk of pancreatitis. It's a very, very small risk. And out of the thousands of people I have treated and put on these medications, I've yet to see a case of it come about.
Huh.
And even then, the pancreatitis component isn't necessarily the drug itself. What we're finding is it's actually because of rapid weight loss. When people lose weight very rapidly, it releases the fat into the bloodstream, and cholesterol is one of those fats. Cholesterol goes out of our body via the liver and our gallbladder. So that's what your bile is.
Mm.
Gets collected in there. And what happens if enough of it's there, it'll concentrate, crystallize, and create gallstones. Well, your pancreas and your gallstones have kind of the same tube that goes down to our intestine. And if those gallstones block that up, that makes your pancreas very, very cranky. That then leads to the pancreatitis. So if someone's worried about it, it's always a conversation of, we want to make sure you're losing weight at a reasonable rate, but not too rapidly. And if you're losing it rapidly, these are kind of the risks and things that we're concerned about. Again, it's usually less than 1%. I would even say less than like 0.1%, but it is certainly a risk that's there. And that's the main other side effect that we're really concerned about with these medications.
So what is too rapidly?
Too rapidly. So my general guidelines for weight loss is about 0.5 pound to 1 pound per week, depending on the individual and how much weight you have to lose. That could be 2 pounds per week. A lot of people get a lot of initial weight loss, like it could be 5-10 pounds in the first couple of weeks. What that mostly is kind of a decrease in inflammation, a decrease in fluid and water weight and that sort of thing. And then after that, it'll kind of be more regular kind of loss over time. But if you're losing weight beyond that 2 pounds per week, pretty good indication that you're kind of stripping away that fat a little bit too quickly. We need to be looking at your nutrition. We need to be worried about your muscle mass. There's a lot of things that we kind of need to be sure that we're monitoring and taking care of because it can be good in one sense, but in another sense, there could be some other complications at the other end.
Yeah, people always want to know how fast can I lose weight? And what I always say is, well, I've always heard 1 to 2 pounds a week, right? And that's so slow. It's so, but I want fast weight loss. So why can't I have fast weight loss? Well, because you might lose your gallbladder, I guess, or
your hair.
Your hair might fall out.
Poor Dr. Dan. He lost 500 pounds.
Yeah, exactly. That was a tragedy. So. But yeah, we have this mentality where people in previous diets, you got onto the diet and you white knuckled it and you did it for just a short period of time to lose the weight. And then it's the idea that once I get to my goal weight, well, then I can go back to normal life and such.
Right.
And it's like,
I'm done. Yeah. No.
Yeah. But magically, you expect your body to kind of maintain that weight when you go back to your old lifestyle that got you to that higher weight. You can got to see the issue with some of the logic around that. And so what we need to kind of start changing the mentality around is that this isn't just a quick fix. It's not just like an on and off. It's very much, this is part of a lifestyle sustainable change, and the weight's going to come off at whatever rate it's going to come off. And some people are just going to lose weight more quickly. Going back to the whole genetics thing. Some people are just going to lose it. Some people have a higher amount of weight. If you have an extensive diet history, that's going to play a role. So there's a lot of different factors that are intersecting, and we need to take all of that into account. But ultimately, finding a way to enjoy the process and find the sustainable habits that you can actually sustain. And that part of that is going to be, you got to enjoy it. If you don't enjoy eating salad every day, well, that's probably not going to work for you long term.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. I love that. Yeah, that's why I tell people, don't eat stuff you don't like. I would see that at Weight Watchers all the time. People making these concoctions of these made up thing, like cottage cheese with this and that and blended all. I'm like, ew. And they're like, oh yeah, I don't really like it, but it's good for me. I'm like, if you don't like it, it's not a sustainable habit. So yeah, you have to eat stuff that you like, just less.
So it seems like a mind shift from a diet culture to the medical treatment of a disease.
Precisely. That is.
How do you counsel your patients on that thought process? Because that's a big jump.
No, absolutely. And so mine is often a case of, I ask every single patient, kind of after I've gone through everything, do you believe that your weight is your fault? And 99% of the time they say, yeah, absolutely. Like, I did this to myself. I chose what I ate, so on and so on. And it's like, well, okay. So what morning did you wake up and decided that you wanted to be fat? And they're like,
I
"Whoa."
woke up and chose obesity today. No, nobody ever chose obesity, right? No, yeah.
Exactly. And so it's like, okay, and you've done all these diets, you've done X, Y, and Z to try and control this weight, yet you haven't been able to control it. So it's
Right.
almost like there's something that's completely outside of your control.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of starting that thought process and stuff like that. It often doesn't quite get through on that first one, but it does, after I repeat it enough times and get that repetition in, it
Yeah.
starts to kind of sink in. And especially when they go on the medication and they're like, my food noise is gone. I don't think about food all the time. It's just, and the weight's just coming off. Like, what gives? This seems so easy. It doesn't seem like I'm on a diet. And it's like, yeah, because we're now controlling the thing that you can't control. And voila, you can lose weight. So
Yeah.
it's helping them to kind of realize that. The big challenge then becomes, because a lot of people think of it as a short-term thing, like I'm going to come off and like this is going to be X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, okay, we want to tamper that. It's certainly possible. 15% of people in the studies have been able to come off the medications, but it's going to be really, really, really hard. And
Mm.
so the way I kind of frame it is, if you have AC in your house or you drive a car, well, you could have walked and you could suffer through the summer in the heat. But ultimately, we've developed these technologies to make our lives easier. And the medications are no different. They're something
Mm.
that allows us to be engaged with higher order things of creating YouTube videos, to be able to do what actually matters with the short time that we're here. And so why not utilize that tool if it's
Yeah.
working for you and it's beneficial and we know it's safe for you long term? So
Yeah. I think when people understand that obesity is not their fault, that it's a chronic disease, and now we have this medication that's a tool that can help you,
mhm,
why would you ever wanna be without it? You know what I mean? Like, w it there's almost like a perception of, "Well, I'll take it for a time and I'll lose the weight, but, well, now I can do better. Now I can be better.
mhm,
Now I don't need the medication so much anymore," and people go off the drug, they gain the weight back, they come back. Um, so I think that's just really important for people to hear, is that obesity is a chronic disease. It's not your fault. We have these medications that are tools for the treatment of obesity. So, like air conditioning, you could suffer through,
mhm,
but why
totally.
would you? We don't have to suffer anymore.
Exactly it,
Mm.
right? And I mean, in the biotech and pharmaceutical space, like what we're going to be seeing in the next 10 years are just going to be unbelievable innovations. And now that AI is there and the things that we're seeing, and we're coming up with completely novel and brand new pharmaceuticals that
Mm.
we never even thought were possible, because AI can like unfold a protein and say like, oh yeah, if you bind it here, it's going to do whatever. And this is the molecule and what it looks like, and it's safe and blah, blah, blah. Like it's going to be very, very fascinating. And it's going to become this case of, well, if you don't take it, then you're going to be like at a disadvantage in society and that sort. So yeah,
Interesting.
it's
So, I
both.
mean, so it
Yeah,
begs the question then, because we have to say it all the time. This is a treatment for the disease of obesity. This is not the cure for the disease of obesity.
totally.
Is it possible the cure happens 5, 10, 20 years from now?
So I never say it's a cure, but I do say we can get it into remission. So
Huh.
we certainly can get it very, very well controlled. And if you're
Mhm.
following a lifestyle that you enjoy and it's sustainable and you're more active and doing X, Y, and Z, absolutely. Yeah, you can maintain that weight. And the more times that you do it, the easier and easier it's going to get. But if you have a very stressful life event, if the perfect set of circumstances come up and you start going back to old habits and patterns, you're going to gain that weight back and your
Yeah.
body is going to be happy to take it on.
Mm.
And so it's in remission. We can knock it down and control it very well. Does it go away altogether? I don't quite believe that, because we're not shutting off the genetics and the biology
Mm.
and the environment that wants you to go back to where it was.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
hard to fight those genetic factors, right?
I watched a whole documentary on CRISPR where they were talking about going in and doing all this little gene splicing and stuff. And one of the things the guy mentioned in just passing
Yeah,
was obesity. He didn't say much about it, but he's like, we think maybe at some point.
Yeah.
totally. Yeah. Like, and that's going to be the biotech space. Like, you're going to take a drug, it'll go into your cells, alter the genetic genome that you have, splice out a gene or put a gap in it so it doesn't work anymore. And yeah, you won't have the same struggle overall. And we very well could have a cure at that point.
So then, if I'm going to need to be on these medications for indefinitely, which I believe we both believe it might be a different version of the medication, but we believe we'll be on it indefinitely. How long can we expect the weight loss to be possible? So I'm pretty close to goal, but if I were another 100 pounds, I wouldn't be, right?
Totally.
How long
Yeah.
can the medications keep working, I guess?
So I think that's kind of the wrong question in
Yeah.
terms of, is it working for weight loss? Because the
Okay.
drug never stops working. The weight loss is going to slow down, and eventually you're going to kind of reach a new low, whatever that's going to be for you. And that's dependent on your dietary patterns, activity levels, stress levels, going through menopause, hormonal changes, and that sort of thing. So that's going to dictate and lead to that. But the drug doesn't stop working. The drug is still this barrier that's up, that's blocking that biology and blocking the food noise and those genetic factors that led to you gaining the weight in the first place. So those are blocked, still there, but you're not seeing the scale move. Okay, if we take the drug away, most people are going to gain the weight back.
Yeah.
So it's not that they stop working in terms of just weight loss. Your body is going to adapt because it doesn't want you to lose weight technically, but it's kind of like almost creating a peace treaty with your body of kind of like, okay, I can deal with the amount of calories, the amount of activity you're doing, and you can maintain here. Everybody's happy, everybody's kosher. But if you slip up even just once, I will take full advantage and get you to gain that weight back. So that's kind of that aspect of it's continuing to work. And we have the longer term studies with Wegovy in particular, where people lost the weight. And I believe it's 4 or 5 years out, they were able to maintain the weight that they lost up to that level. And now we're getting more and more studies with longer and longer duration. And we're seeing that people can just maintain it indefinitely. If they want to lose more weight, yeah, they got to pay more attention to it and focus more on their protein intake and activity levels, which absolutely, that's totally okay. But you've got to keep that sustainability piece in mind and what that might be for you.
Yeah. Do you think there's a point where your body doesn't want to lose any more weight and really fight you? Like if you get down too low, is your body going to really try to hang on to every pound more so than when you first started?
I mean, the entire process of even losing just 1 kilo of weight, you're going to have a ton of metabolic adaptations kicking in. It's just more weight that you lose, those adaptations get higher and higher and higher and higher. So again, we have to kind of remember that the body is designed for survival in a very scarce environment. So if you went 2 weeks without food, yeah, it's kicking in every mechanism and system to make sure that you stay alive. And so with the more weight that you lose, that is all going to increase and become substantially worse. And so much so that if you get to, a low enough point, more so if you're just not getting the necessary nutrients to properly nourish your body, what's going to end up happening is that even if you're on the medication, that biology is going to become so powerful that it doesn't matter how much of that drug I pump into you, it's going to overpower it because it's saying, you either do this or you die. What would you like to do? And so
Okay.
biology is, well, and we always say biology will always win
Will always
because
win. It wants to keep you alive. Your body wants to keep you alive at all costs.
Oh, totally. And
Yeah.
it has millennia of experience of doing that, whereas you have your short span that you're here on life. Like, good luck. Biology is very good at what it does.
Well,
Yeah.
and it's why we want fat, because fat has the highest amount of calories in it, the most energy to take in. So our body says, give me as much as I can so I can survive.
I guess what I'm thinking is, how do I know when I'm at my goal weight? Is it just something I agree on with my doctor? Does my body have a weight that I can maintain easily? You know what I mean? Like, so I weigh 141 pounds. I'm 5'4". Maybe I should weigh 135 pounds. Should I not? I don't know.
Totally. And so I think this is kind of another leftover remnant from like the diet culture and that sort of thing that
I'm very brainwashed by diet culture.
absolutely. And you have to reach this magical number because at this number, I don't know, the heavens open up and angels and stuff start singing. But the reality is that we don't necessarily use goal weight. We use what's called your best weight, which is
Mhm.
the weight that you can live at while living your healthiest, most active and nutritious lifestyle possible. And that's whatever that's going to be is going to be what you can sustain not only today, but 10 years from now.
Interesting.
So it's not a specific number. I have no idea how much you're going to lose or where that's going to be for you, but it's
Yeah.
ultimately you finding it. And then over the course of your life, it can shift and change because, I
Yeah.
have some patients who started with walking and then they started jogging. And now I have some of them that have gone all the way that they're like amateur powerlifters in their 70s and stuff like that. And
Wow.
like their best weight has changed. And in fact, their weight's actually gone up because they've had to
Adding
pack on
muscle.
so much muscle and that
Mhm.
sort. So
Yeah.
it's kind of getting away from this very hyper number focused and instead looking at your best weight because yes,
Yeah.
weight and excess fat tissue can lead to health issues. But if you've lost a substantial amount of weight and you're engaging in all of these healthy behaviors, well, that's
Mhm.
what's really going to trip the scale later on. And
Mm.
in particular, if you're building muscle, that's where the money is. That's the
Yeah.
more muscle mass you have, the healthier you're going to be, the
Mm.
more active you're going to be able to be, the less pain you're going to be in. Like the benefits just go up and up and up and up kind of thing. And
Yeah.
so that's the better transition and the better way to kind of think about and strive
Mm.
for.
Got it. Got it. Yeah, it's 40 years of dieting. I've always been like trying to hit this certain number, and now I've hit a goal weight that I like that I can maintain. I've maintained it for 6 months. I feel like if I wanted to get lower, I could drop my calories down, I could exercise more, but would I wanna live like that forever? Not eat a piece of birthday cake? Well, no.
Totally. Yeah.
I wanna be at a place where I can enjoy my life, go out to dinner once in a while, you know what I mean? So I can appreciate that your best weight, and then the adding the muscle piece, that's definitely a mind shift for me, getting away from a focus on the scale to a focus on maybe building some more muscle, and even if that means the scale goes up a few pounds, that's okay. Like,
Totally. Yeah. Absolutely.
it's hard for me to, like, say that, but yeah, because I'm so, diet culture brainwashed, but yeah, that would be okay if I could gain some muscle. I'm 55, so thinking about, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, I don't wanna fall and hurt myself, or I wanna have enough muscle to have balance and all that good stuff, so
Yeah,
it's definitely
absolutely.
a a mind shift thing.
Well, and that's always the hardest part because yeah, you're very much programmed that if the scale goes up, well, then that means I'm failing, I'm falling back on old habits, and I'm never going to lose the weight again. But I often talk to my patients that, we have a weight range that you're ultimately going to be at. So if you're at 140 pounds right now, I always
Mhm.
kind of put like a plus or minus 10 pounds on either side
Yeah.
because life is still going to happen.
Mhm.
Winter here is still going to be happening where we hibernate inside for a couple of weeks at a time. And that's going to be eating more food, more sedentary, so on. And so you're going to gain some weight over that period.
Yeah.
Cool. Once I'm back to my usual routine and everything thaws out, well, okay, I can get back to my regular activity levels. Same thing if you like, you got a trip coming up to Mexico and you're like, oh, I'd like to lose a few more pounds. Cool. I can exercise more. I can reduce my calories down and I can lose weight and feel better in Mexico or whatever like that. But it's ultimately understanding that, okay, once I get back and I get back to my normal routine, I won't be able to sustain this going
Yeah.
forward. So I'll come back up to my in between kind of where I'm bouncing around at. So
Yeah.
it's looking at it as kind of a weight range rather than being so fixated on a number because everybody, well, pretty much everybody should gain weight, post Christmas, post vacation, or you didn't really do Christmas and vacation properly. So it's having that idea and that perspective in place, and it helps to kind of protect you that the world isn't ending. We're not
Yeah.
falling and failing backwards.
Yeah.
We're living life. And that's ultimately what we're trying to do best.
I like that, the range. Now, if I gained 10 pounds from where I'm at now, I would panic.
Totally.
Maybe a 5-pound up or down range, I could maybe wrap my head around mentally, but I like that idea of a range. You can drop some weight for this or that, and you might gain some weight over, winter. But I would never gain weight over winter and say, cool, like you just did.
Yeah, totally. So it's kind of taking that into account, and it's also changing that belief around it that, oh, I know the habits and things that I need to do to maintain this lower weight. So once I get back to doing them, well, that's where your weight's going to then resettle back out.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting.
Well, so how do you think about stalls and plateaus on these medications? Because when we're in weight loss mode, particularly early on, for me, I think I lost 17 pounds in the first month,
Mhm.
and I went really steady for the first 6 months, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh crap, it didn't move.
Totally. Yeah. So the way I have kind of two things that I say with it. There's either you're at a plateau or you've hit the floor. So at a plateau, that means more weight loss is possible. When you've hit the floor, that's when you're at your best weight, when you're doing as much as you can, you're eating the best way possible that you can, and so on and so forth. And there's not any further changes or tweaks that you can make in your life at that moment right now. That's kind of where you're going to hit that floor. And again, that can change in a couple of years, what have you, but it's going to be dependent on life circumstances. And maybe it's in retirement, you'll have more time, etc. But a plateau, people get really caught up on this. If the scale doesn't move for like a week, 2 weeks, is like, oh my God. What I define as a plateau is when you have continued to do the same thing over and over. You haven't seen that scale either maybe shift up or not change, and then said, fuck it, I'm just going to eat and consume whatever I want, and derailed yourself. You have consistently kept doing it for a 4-week period. If that scale truly is not trending downwards, if the number's not clicking down, okay, you're at an actual plateau. If you continue to do things, but now you're losing half a pound instead of a pound per week, cool. You're not at a plateau. Your body is just adapting and continuing on in that process. And with every pound that you lose, the next pound is going to be harder and harder to lose over time. So it's setting that expectation, not having that rebound effect that so many people do of the all or nothing type thinking, and doing kind of an inventory as to whether you've truly reached the plateau or not. Now, if you have reached a plateau, scale hasn't moved for 4 weeks, you've been consistent, it then becomes the question of, okay, can I get more activity in? Can I reduce my calories lower? What can I do to make a change so that the scale continues to move? If you can't make any changes, you're at hitting the floor and you're at your best weight for right now. If you're like, you know what, I'm just walking right now, maybe I can start jogging, or maybe I can go to the gym, or hey, you know what, I have, a bottle of wine on the weekend, maybe I just need to have a glass, and you're able to make a change like that, cool. You're going to start seeing the shift start happening. But again, it's probably just going to be a slower process because your body is adapting. It's saying, screw you, we don't like what's happening, and it's going to be fighting against you. So that's kind of the way that I differentiate it and kind of look at it. And yeah, it's kind of a much better way to kind of conceptualize it, but it's hard to kind of break and build that mindset around it.
Well, so how do you see the titration process working into this? Because we see people who are very large, 500-600 pounds, that want to go as slow as possible because they want to get as much out of this as they can, and it's understandable. And then we see kind of this other end of, I want to stay on 2.5 because that's all I need and I'm better than you.
Yes, it becomes like, it's like the diet wars that we have where people are, because the keto diet worked for them, like it becomes some superiority complex that they're better than other people and so on and so forth. And yeah, it's all biology and biases of humans, and we want to form our tribes and our people and that sort. And we often think if something worked for me, well, it's going to work for all 7 billion people on the planet. Like that is, I don't know what's wrong with people, but this is the holy grail here.
Tirzepatide, everybody needs to be on it. Yeah.
Well, exactly. Right. So yeah, I mean, whatever, the thing with these drugs is that they're so powerful now that it's not about titrating you up to the highest dose possible as quickly as possible. It's about finding whatever dose works for you. So some people are going to be more sensitive to it. Some people are going to be less sensitive. There's going to be X, Y, and Z issue and so on. But if, 5 milligrams of tirzepatide a week works for you, cool, fly at her. Like, do whatever makes you happy kind of thing.
Yeah.
But some people need that 15 milligram dose because that's just where their body responds and things start clicking. And so it's finding the dose that works for you and just stopping the comparison to other people and just live your life and work with what dose works for you. Now, people, of course, kind of panic of like, oh, if I'm at 15 milligram, I have nowhere to go. There's, what happens when I stop losing weight and stuff? And it's like, well, again, these drugs are a tool. You still got to do the behavior changes and that sort of thing to engage and to make those tweaks. And wherever you fall out at, again, is going to be your best weight if you can't make further changes.
Your best weight if you can't make further changes. But what if my best weight is a weight I don't want to be? You know what I mean? What if my best?
That's a you problem, not a drug problem.
What if my best? Yeah, but what if what if I can't get to the weight I've always wanted to get to because I've gone up to 15 and now my body is telling me you're at the floor, like you've added all the things.
Mm-hmm.
You're at the floor, like that's hard. That would be hard for me to hear. I can't, you know what I mean? Like, really?
Well, have you ever wanted to be 5'7" instead of 5'4"?
Every day of my life. Yeah.
Cool. Why haven't you got
I want
there?
to be 4 too, but it's not happening. So
totally,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
when your genetics and stuff come into play, it's more about
Genetics.
looking at, and accepting where you're at and what your body is going to do. And again, shifting that mindset from purely this idea of I need to lose all of this weight to, hey, look at all the things that I can do and look how fit I am and how much stronger I am. And it's changing that perspective versus this idea that unless I reach this magical number, I won't be happy. And you could spend your entire life being frustrated about that and beating your head against the wall. But is that really the way that you want to spend your life? Is like your weight really worth it? Are you going to suddenly, between 140 and 130, like at 130, you become a completely different person, you become richer and so on and so forth? No, of course not.
No, of course not. Good. You've got good advice, Dr. Dan. I appreciate this therapy session.
And for those that don't respond as well to these medications, there's a lot in development now with additional activations and there's like 600 drugs out there. So.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like Retatrutide, the newest guy that's going to be coming out pretty quickly here that's going to be, I think, a game changer because literally everybody is going to be able to lose some amount of weight. Like the initial preliminary studies it's showing people like they're getting to such a low weight now that they're swinging almost into being underweight, and they actually had to pull them back on the dose to prevent them from losing further weight. So it's going to be kind of an issue of like even just a safety perspective and proper monitoring around that of like, and in some cases, some people that have obesity, they have an undiagnosed eating disorder. And if I give you a drug that gives you your wish of never eating again, that's a problem. And so that's another big gap and like a whole other conversation around eating disorders and that sort of thing. But there's going to be both some fascinating and amazing advancements, but we definitely need to get the supports in place to help people properly lose weight and manage their health.
Well, and I was excited to see because Novo just reported yesterday in the CagriSema research, they had not forced them to titrate up. So they had allowed them to use what they needed, which is a huge mind shift for researchers at Novo.
Totally. Absolutely. Like it's very much changing that idea and perspective and realizing that, it's whatever works for you. Whereas in the studies, what they often do is they push them up and cause all kinds of side effects and that sort of thing. But some people just don't tolerate the higher doses because you might get more of a response. But if you feel like you're nauseous and vomiting every day, well, what kind of quality of life is that?
Yeah. And people just won't stick with it. They won't stay on it.
It had the highest instance of staying on the medication by letting them do that too. So that's pretty awesome. So let's talk about some of the juicy stuff that TikTok and all kinds of doctors in quotes are talking about. Microdosing. What's your thoughts?
So the microdosing aspect of things is, what I see this as is very much a case of people kind of figuring out what works for them, but also the traditional influencer who sold some bullshit product or supplement no longer being able to sell that product or supplement. They tried attacking the whole drugs and they're toxic and that sort of thing, but very much society and everybody kind of said, well, no, that's not actually the case. Like we're getting such profound results that it's not as bad as what you're saying it is. So you can't beat them, you might as well join them. And so they're kind of creating their own special programs that kind of that they believe work. And in theory, like it's kind of sound, but microdosing these drugs, it's just what they're usually doing is using just a smaller dose than what you usually start on. And the idea behind it is that, well, if you're using a smaller dose, you're getting less of it, and it's the dose is the poison, and so on and so forth. But in reality, if you're taking the drug, we're increasing the amount of GLP-1 in your system. You're getting that exposure to it. So if it's going to have some kind of negative effect, really we're going to be splitting hairs of whether you get it at a low dose or you get it at the higher dose. And so it's kind of this, it interesting, but also just we're not really kind of getting any kind of particular benefit either way or either side of it. Does microdosing do anything special? There's no indication as to why. We don't have any studies to say that it does. In practice, I have people that are on, say, Wegovy 0.125 because that's all they can tolerate, and they're having great effects. So again, it's just that finding that dose that works for you. But at the end of the day, it's nothing special. It's something that I think has been very hyped up by a few celebrities to sell a product that really isn't going to do anything special.
So a microdose might work for you if you're someone who can't tolerate the starting dose.
Totally.
It might make sense, but someone who takes.
But in that case, it's not microdosing; it's personalized medicine.
Well, that's a personalized right. That's a personalized dose. So the starting dose of Tirzepatide, Zep Bound's 2.5. So if somebody wanted to take a microdose of compounded Tirzepatide at like a 1.0 milligram level, it's possible that they could get benefit from it, but it's also possible that it's not enough to really do anything for anybody.
Exactly. For a majority of people, like 2.5 is kind of the minimum dose that we get some kind of effect at.
Yeah.
And the studies bear this out as well. 5 milligrams is where we get the most benefit from a diabetes perspective. As you go up on the dose, you get a little bit more benefit, but 5 milligrams is kind of your bang for the buck if you're using it solely for diabetes. The 15 milligram, as you go up in terms of weight loss, I can't remember exactly how much, but at each like 5, 10, and 15, there was like a doubling of the amount of weight loss that was lost at each dosage. So the studies bear out that, like you'll get some response. And maybe if you're a super tiny person that actually doesn't really need to lose any weight and maybe just using this really for cosmetic purposes and whatever Tyra Banks is recommending it, well, okay, maybe that really low dose is all that you need and it's going to be perfect. You lose your 5 pounds, you go to Mexico, good for you. But most of the people that are actually using these medications to help correct this chronic disease and to help them to manage their weight and health, they're going to need more of the drug. And that's totally okay. It's like creating another dichotomy of like, I'm better than you for using a low dose and so on, right? And it's just not the case. You got to use whatever dose works for you. Some people need more, some people need less. It's whatever is best at the end of the day.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I found that like 7.5 for me, that's my maintenance dose now. I did really well on 7.5 in the process of losing weight. I think I was on it for 6 weeks. I went up to 10 for about 6 weeks. I went to 12.5, hit my goal, and then started coming back down. And I just find 7.5 I can maintain, right? I tried 5, kind of got too hungry. I kind of heard the cupcakes calling me from across town. So, so I've just kind of leveled out at 7.5. Do you think the maintenance dosing is personalized too? Is it just something everybody has to figure out for themselves?
Yeah, totally. Like, it's whatever, again, dose works for you. Like if someone's at 15 and we try to bring down their dose and go to 12.5, but then all the cupcakes and stuff like that start coming back. Okay, 15 milligrams is your maintenance dose. Again, could that change in the future as you get more protein in, you start building muscle mass and that sort? Sure, absolutely. It definitely could be. But again, it's kind of finding what is going to work for you and whatever dose makes it easy for you to still maintain that weight without you having to, spend hours tracking your food and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
There's your magic dose. It's again, whatever works for you. And if it's 15, it's great. If it's 5, awesome. Good for you.
Yeah. Yep.
All right. So next question, because this is the video that I watched that I sent you an email about the whole "can my receptors be flooded and I need to cycle peptides" conversation. Talk to
Cycling.
me. Yeah, talk to me about that.
Totally. So the whole idea, it sounds like a very good story, and it makes sense that yes, your cells will have so many GLP-1 receptors on the outside, and if we pump a whole bunch of this drug in, well, clearly the body is going to respond by down regulating those receptors and not having as much of them so that you don't get side effects and so on and so forth and whatever. And to some degree, yeah, at the cellular level, there's probably some of that going on. But when we look at the clinical picture, where we're not looking at just cells in a petri dish, what you're going to ultimately get is the drugs continue working long term. And yes, we get some of the food noise, and some people will start regaining the weight, but that's not because the drug is desensitizing or because your body's getting used to the drug. It's because biology is kicking in and doing what it does best.
Oh,
And
keeping
so,
you alive, the whole keeping you alive thing.
totally. And if you've lost 50
Oh,
pounds, that's a lot of weight. That's very scary for your body. It thinks lost the ability to do the hunting gathering thing.
yeah.
And so it's going to be trying and pushing and motivating you to go and find food. And so longer that you're doing it, the more weight that you lose, the more built up that's going to get. But desensitization, your body not getting used to it, there's no clinical evidence of it happening. Sure, in a petri dish, it might downregulate and we not have as many, but that doesn't translate to the human body because the human body is much more complex than that. So that's kind of that piece of it going on there. And then it's been something that's been kind of hyped up. And, when we talked about the drug no longer working or I'm no longer losing weight, again, it's a piece of the drug's not stopped working. It's still putting up that barrier, but you're just not losing any further weight because you're no longer in the calorie deficit. You have to make further changes to lose weight and keep continuing on. But it's not the drug, doing its thing. And if we take away the drug, well, there's a very good chance that you're going to regain that weight back. What'll happen is you'll start gaining weight. You'll then panic. You'll crash diet, go back on the drug. But in that process, you've got more metabolic adaptations going on. You're now at a higher weight. You're further dysregulating the whole appetite metabolic system. And it's going to make it even harder to lose more weight ongoing. It's like someone
The
who
cycling might have made it worse.
totally, yeah.
You might have lost some muscle, and now your BMR, your metabolic rate is lower, and you're worse than when you. Yeah, I mean, and that's that's the story of my life with the yo-yo dieting, right? With every regain, you add fat, and you've lost the muscle, and
Totally.
rinse and repeat for my whole life.
Well, and the thing that we say in practice is that the best way to gain 5 pounds is to lose 20. It's going to happen every time. So yeah, so it's the cycling aspect of it. I definitely don't recommend it. And it's kind of just taking a broader picture and looking at, okay, what's my lifestyle? Where am I at? And also, maybe checking those expectations, because maybe you have this idea that I need to reach this magical number. And if I don't reach it, well, then that's it. I'll never be the human that I want to be. And it's like, well, that's not realistic. We need to kind of look at where you're at. Are you feeling better? Is your health improved and that sort? And maybe right now, maybe you're a mom with 2 young kids and working a full-time job and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Weight loss isn't your 100% sole focus. You're not like Jenny on Instagram, who's childless and not married and just makes videos all day about losing weight. Clearly, she's got the time for it, but you don't. And that's okay.
Yeah. What about people who, for maintenance, maybe for cost reasons, go from Tirzepatide to semaglutide? Could that be a maintenance, a helpful thing for maintenance, or would that not be helpful?
I mean, it depends on you and your biology and how you respond to one over the other kind of thing.
Uh-huh.
If semaglutide works for you and it knocks things down enough for you, sweet, you definitely could do that. But if you maybe got minimal response with semaglutide and it wasn't until you switched to Tirzepatide that you got the response and moving in the direction you want to go,
Yeah.
Probably unlikely that suddenly you switch over to semaglutide, you're going to get more of an effect or response. It's always possible, because there is also the effect of, as you get in and lose weight and start getting into a smaller body, the drug concentration is going to go up. So you may have been maintaining or losing weight at 7.5 milligrams at 160 pounds, but now you're at 140 pounds. Well, you technically have a higher concentration of the drug in your system. So that could certainly be the case, that adding the semaglutide into a smaller space, it then is effective for you.
Yeah, just thinking about, the compounding if compounding were to go away at some point in the future, could I switch over to Wegovy or something like that? Or, just people have asked us that
Us wacky
question.
Americans in our healthcare.
Totally. Yeah.
People have asked us that, and for cost reasons, compounded semaglutide is about $100 cheaper a month than compounded tirzepatide. So I've seen people doing that. Just wondering your point of view on that.
Yeah, totally. And I would even say, like, here in Canada, we've actually started, there was a major recall on the compounded semaglutide and weight loss products that a particular pharmacy was making across the country. And so they have recalled all their products because, again, as I've been kind of beating the drum on, they've been using research grade peptides that aren't technically authorized and allowed to be on the market, because they're not the actual semaglutide that Novo makes. And so they've been utilizing and using these things. And now it's kind of being nipped in the bud, and Canada's a little bit more diligent in pulling them from the market. And so that's going to put a huge barrier there. Whether the States follows or not, I mean, you guys have a lot more money that's being thrown around and lobbying Congress, and who knows, Trump might just suddenly flip the switch and there you go, it's gone. Or,
He could go either way. We have no idea.
Totally. Absolutely. Right. So
I mean, as you know, the Zep Bound here in the States for people without insurance coverage is $1,400 a month. It's just like unattainable for a normal person. So a lot of people have gone the compounded route just for the cost reasons. So, it's scary to think that all the reasons, the reasons you just said.
Let's go back to the research. Let me say the research spiel. Because in America, you can go online and you can go to a research grade website, and it does not require a prescription, and you don't know where those are coming from. And it clearly says not for human use.
Not for human use.
Don't use those.
Anything that says not for human use, I don't want to inject into my body, for sure. Right.
Yeah, totally. Well, it's always the case of, like, is weight loss really worth it? And I can always tell when someone, they'll say, oh, it's for my health, but is it actually? You're now injecting a unknown product with unknown other aspects to it. And that's,
I mean, not for anything. When I first started compounded Tirzepatide, I honestly didn't know that much about it, but I've tried everything, right? I'll do anything, I'll try anything. So maybe, but if it says not for human consumption, I guess I would draw the line there.
Totally. Yeah, absolutely.
But I understand that mindset of, I'll try it, because I have tried everything. I've done all the diets, I've run the half marathons, I've done the things. What else can I do?
Totally. Absolutely.
Well, so then kind of closing it up here, there's a lot of people out there selling supplements and Nature's Ozempics and all these other things. Is there anything else out there that's actually gonna either A, replace these medications, or B, help these medications?
Okay. So there's nothing that's going to be replacing them. There's just nothing.
There's no Nature's Ozempic.
No,
Then I can buy
not
from
at all.
TikTok. Wait a minute. The girl on TikTok can't sell now.
No. If you want to take berberine, it helps with regulating blood sugars. Most of the weight loss that I can see is it caused a bunch of diarrhea, and cool, if that's the way you want to lose weight. You didn't actually lose fat, but hey, your bowel's nice and cleaned out. So good for you. Exactly it, right? But yeah, there's no Nature's Ozempic. There's no natural supplement that is going to increase the GLP-1 hormone level in your body to anywhere near what you're going to get with these molecules that are currently on the market. Now, things to do to help the medications, well, that's pretty much going to the basics of, like, eating more protein, resistance training, increasing your activity levels, managing your stress, getting 7 to 9 hours of sleep every single night, all the basic stuff that everybody knows we need to do, but it's all the really hard crap that, actually doing it is a whole
Right.
other different story. But
Right.
those are the things that you can implement. And then even when we look at the data, say if you're not on the drug, if you want to naturally increase your levels of GLP-1 in the body, eating more protein is going to help to do that. Exercising is going to help to do that. All of those things are going to help to stack and build up the GLP-1 level in your body. But your body is eventually going to reach some kind of ceiling because, again, the amount of GLP-1 you produce is going to be genetically determined.
Mm.
And what we find is that people who struggle with obesity and in particular diabetes at the same time, they actually naturally have lower levels of GLP-1 to begin with.
Huh.
So it's nice in theory. Again, it has a very good story around it of how it can and whatnot like that. But yeah, there's nothing that's going to compare to the medications and the support they provide.
So I see
Okay.
all the time on Facebook and Reddit and all these people who have posted pictures of all the supplements that they're taking. And it'll be like 20 different supplements.
Totally.
And a few people have hurt themselves because they had magnesium in every one of them and poisoned themselves. Are there supplements that you typically recommend, or what's your approach on, do I need extra stuff?
I mean, it really depends, again, on where you're kind of at and what your current diet is.
Mm-hmm.
In general, like especially if you live kind of in the more northern climates, vitamin D, hands down, 1,000 to 2,000 IU per day. It's a great addition for anybody just because we just are not getting the sun exposure
Right.
here. And so that's always kind of a big one. It would depend on what your dietary patterns are. So if you're more vegan and vegetarian, we want to make sure your vitamin B12 levels are good, your iron levels are good. So it might mean supplementing with those as you need to. In general, magnesium is a pretty safe bet for most people. If nothing else, like the reason why people use magnesium for sleep is that it's a muscle relaxant. So it just helps you feel relaxed, which helps you to fall asleep. So if magnesium allows you to do that and you have no problem tolerating it, cool, go for it. I really have no problem with that one. If we wanted to get into the kind of higher level, you're starting to do more exercise and resistance training and that sort of thing. I mean, looking at things like zinc could certainly be considered. It helps with kind of muscle contraction and that sort of thing. Even going as far as things like creatine. Creatine's very well studied, very safe. I often recommend it for women that are going through perimenopause and they're starting to lift weights, just because it's going to help you to get stronger, build more muscle and that sort of thing. So that could be something that you look at in that respect of it. And then supplement wise, a lot of people, struggle to get the higher amounts of protein in. So yeah, using protein shakes, protein bars, protein products, all great alternatives. Of course, if you can get it through food, fantastic. But even me, I'm busy throughout the day and having a shake in between patients and stuff like that. Well, yeah, I'm gonna down a shake because it's easy, it's quick. I don't have to think about it. And I get a quick shot of protein that kind of carries me through the rest of the day so that I can work on my, fitness and health goals and such like that. So overall, most people I find overcomplicate it. And generally it's need to really kind of just keep it to the basics. You don't have to get into all these other special things that really have little to no evidence overall. And depending on where they're manufactured and how they're manufactured, yeah, could like blow up your liver or cause other kinds of issues and problems.
Yeah.
So we get lots of questions from people who are just starting or haven't started yet. And they're like, what are all the things I need right now? And they've got 10 things because they're afraid of all the side effects and they just start taking them.
Yeah.
Do you recommend that, or what's your thought process there?
I'm usually the case of, again, we want to simplify it. We want to start with something small and very much following the 80-20 rule. So those 10 supplements, they're probably going to give you little to no results overall. You getting more protein into your diet, yeah, that's going to give you some pretty substantial benefits. You going for a walk, even if it's 5 or 10 minutes once a day, again, you're going to get that 80% benefit. So what are the 20% of things that are going to give you that big, huge overall benefit? We want to be focusing and doing those things, because those are going to be the things that build the win, that build the self-efficacy, that build the confidence, that get you to move in the direction that you want to go so that you can actually start becoming healthier and sustain the habits long term. So overall, yeah, I don't recommend jumping on a bunch of supplements. It's, again, when I do blood work and stuff, some people might be a little bit low on some things or another, and yeah, we'll maybe start something right away. But for most people, you're doing pretty good, because with the processed foods, there can be fortification where you're getting most of the nutrients and stuff that you need. It's just a matter of, we need to reduce how much processed food you're consuming, increasing the protein, and really increasing the activity. Like if you want the true, it's even like I would say like a 90-10 in terms of activity. If you just become more active, the health benefits that are going to come from that, there is nothing that we can prescribe or give you that can give you that kind of result. It's,
Wow.
yeah, just doesn't even compare.
So movement is that important. It's more important than almost anything else save protein, maybe.
Totally. Yeah, exactly it. Like movement is, if we were just moving more and just walking more, like our population would be vastly more healthy. And it's the easiest and quickest thing to start getting some kind of results overall, whether it be health, weight loss, or what have you. It's not super great for weight loss or anything like that, but it's often going to have a downstream effect of you making other changes in your life that then will lead to weight loss.
And the one big thing they're all afraid of is constipation. So they want to start taking stuff before they ever even take the medicine. Do they need to?
I usually recommend most people, like whether you have constipation or not, adding in a fiber supplement, because most of us are not consuming enough fiber in a day. I'm a big fan of Metamucil. I definitely know, like when I don't take Metamucil at night, things start going weird on me, and my stomach's much more upset. So again, it's finding what's going to work for you. I know like the Restore Lax gummies and that sort of thing are pretty popular for people, but in general, a fiber supplement can help to keep the pipes clear and moving along, but it also just has huge health benefits overall. There really is no upper limit in the amount of fiber you can have. It just keeps having all kinds of benefits the more and more that you have, as long as it doesn't cause further GI issues and problems for you.
I like that.
I like
So do we
fiber
miss any
gummies.
buzzy issues you really want to talk about?
No, I think we've pretty much covered them all. It was a great little chat we've had here.
Yeah, no, I've really enjoyed it. I've learned a lot.
Oh, let's see here. Oh, let's put this on here. So make sure you go to Dan's channel and subscribe. He's on YouTube. How often do you publish, Dan?
We're doing once a week right now, and looking at potentially increasing that. But for right now, once a week kind of balances with clinic and everything like
Yep.
that. So every Monday, I'm usually dropping a new video.
Every Monday. So go subscribe. Every Monday, Dan's going to drop a new video. We'll wait till we're done here, but then go subscribe.
Totally.
Make sure you like and subscribe to our channel as well. And we appreciate it. We actually publish every day, most weeks, which is kind of insane, but it's my kind of insanity. Yeah. Well, thank you for joining us, Dan. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. No, thanks for having me, guys. It's been a great chat.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Dan.
All right. So my name is Christopher Durham.
I'm Laraine Durham.
We are the Downsized. We'll see you next time.